The silver coin strikes the dusty lap of a woman waiting in the shadow of the Etemenanki Ziggurat. It is roughly 450 BC, Babylon. Every woman, regardless of rank, must sit in the precinct of Mylitta and submit to a stranger. This is the sacred sex ritual of Babylon they tried to erase from history. But the clay tablets remember what the Greek historians softened. She wears a crown of cord. A knotted rope binds her waist, the singular symbol of her debt to the state. Until a passerby throws the silver and speaks the holy formula, she cannot stand. She cannot speak. She is no longer a daughter or a wife. She is an offering suspended in time. Why did the priesthood mandate this total surrender of bodily autonomy? And what became of those the strangers refused to touch, the women who waited not for days, but for years, until their names were struck from the registers of the living? The temple walls keep count of those who never leave. If you enjoy these dark histories, leave a like and subscribe and comment below where you're listening from. And now, back to the story. The sacred precinct of Aphrodite Mylitta is not a garden of pleasure. It is a corral. The ground is hard-packed earth, stained by spilled wine and the gray dust of thousands. Herodotus, writing with a foreigner's shock, noted that while the beautiful left, quickly others waited 3 or 4 years. The knotted rope around the waist acts as a chain of custody. It is not merely a garment, it is a seal of state ownership. Until the silver falls, the woman belongs to the god, not to herself. Priests in linen robes drift through the seated crowds like vultures. They carry wet clay tablets, marking not names, but the passage of time. A sharp wedge is pressed into the soft clay for every moon cycle a woman remains. The system is bureaucratic and cold. Change beat. At the sound of the evening bell, the dynamic shifts. The gates are barred from the outside. The guests become inmates. The sanctuary protects them from the world, but nothing protects them from the sanctuary. In the deepening twilight, a quiet resistance hardens among the long-term captives. They stop raising their eyes to the men. They weave the dust into patterns on their skirts, refusing to beg for the coin. This silence threatens the temple's economy, which relies on turnover. A junior priest approaches a woman who has sat for 6 months. He whispers an offer of mercy. She can leave tonight, bypassing the ritual. The cost is 10 times the standard silver coin, paid directly to the temple treasury. Change beat. But the ledger will remain blank. She will be marked as one who failed the goddess. It is a trap disguised as freedom. To pay is to admit unworthiness. To stay is to endure indefinite imprisonment. The institution forces a choice between public shame and private hell. Those who cannot pay and cannot attract a stranger are moved to the rear courts. Here, the torches are spaced further apart. The light is dim. The men rarely walk this far. The women are pushed out of sight, effectively erased while still breathing. The stone walls seem to grow taller as the hope of a coin vanishes. Every day they stay, the price of leaving doubles. The condition for release is absolute submission. But for the women in the rear courts, the terms have shifted. It is no longer about attracting a stranger. It is about breaking the will. By the 3rd year of confinement, the temple administration stops providing the daily ration of barley and oil. The families outside, shamed by the long absence of their kin, are expected to send food. When the baskets stop arriving, the woman faces the institution's final ultimatum. Beg with fervor, or starve in silence. Change beat. The priests remove the shade cloths. The midday sun beats down on the unclaimed, baking the clay floor until it cracks. Thirst becomes a tool of theology. The temple guards, men with heavy bronze-tipped staves, pace the perimeter, ensuring no woman sits in a way that hides her face. They prod those who slump, forcing upright posture even as bodies fail. The goal is not sexual attraction anymore. It is the public performance of availability. The temple requires the visual proof that the state owns the womb. A merchant from the north, smelling of camel hair and sour wine, wanders into this section. He is not looking for beauty. He is looking for a bargain. He stops before the woman who has worn the cord since the previous harvest. He tosses the silver coin. It lands in the fold of her skirt, glinting against the dirty wool. He recites the mandatory formula. I invoke the goddess Mylitta. Hesitation. Moment, the woman's hand moves to the coin, fingers hovering over the cool metal, then freezes. Her breath catches, a sharp intake of dry air that rattles in her chest. To take it is to eat tonight. To take it is to go home. But to take it is to validate the system that caged her. She does not pick it up. She looks at the merchant, her eyes rheumy and hard. "The goddess is dead here," she says. It is a cold, flat refusal. She brushes the coin onto the ground. Internal micro hook. Compliance buys freedom, but defiance buys a soul. Change beat. The merchant recoils, insulted. He retrieves his silver and leaves. The guard approaches, seeing the rejection. He strikes the ledger with his stylus, drawing a thick line through her entry. The revelation is stark. The sacred ritual acts as a massive inheritance tax. If a woman is not chosen or refuses to complete the rite, she cannot legally marry. Her dowry, held in escrow, eventually forfeits to the temple treasury. This is the engine of the institution, profit extracted from social paralysis. But the starvation and the heat do not break her. Instead, the deprivation calcifies her resolve. The silence becomes a shield. She stops waiting for men. She stops looking at the gate. The knotted rope, once a mark of shame, becomes a belt of war. She sits perfectly still, a statue of flesh amongst the stone, denying the temple the satisfaction of her surrender. She has realized that while they can keep her body, they cannot force the transaction that validates their law. The ledger cannot account for a woman who chooses to rot. In 1913, deep beneath the rubble of the Sagala complex, German archaeologist Robert Koldewey uncovered a chamber that did not appear on the ceremonial maps. The air inside had been still for 2 millennia. It smelled of dry rot and bitumen. Here, stacked in neat rows, were not statues of gold, but baskets of clay tablets, the administrative heart of the operation. Change beat. Among the debris, the excavators found remnants of the knotted ropes, preserved in the anaerobic mud. They were not discarded, they were tagged. Scholars translating these temple administrative texts noticed a distinct anomaly in the script. The handwriting on the ledgers for grain distribution and loan sharking matched the stylistic hands of the Nadītu, a class of women who lived within the temple walls, childless and unmarried. The evidence suggests a terrifying inversion of the narrative. The women who were rejected in the courtyard, those who sat for years without the coin, were not simply discarded, they were absorbed. Internal micro hook. The ritual was not a test of beauty, but a filtration system for obedience. Those who took the coin and left returned to the harmless obscurity of domestic life. But those who refused or were ignored were stripped of their external identities and repurposed as the temple's eyes and ears. They became the scribes, the weavers of the holy curtains, and the keepers of debt records. The failure to be chosen was the initiation into the institution's true inner circle. Change beat. A specific tablet, dated to the reign of Nebuchadnezzar II, lists the assets of the temple treasury. The signature at the bottom does not belong to a high priest. It bears the mark of a woman's cylinder seal, a woman who, according to the intake logs, had entered the precinct 5 years prior and never departed. She had not escaped the system. She had become the system. The ropes were not chains of slavery, but the belts of the jailers. Act 1 assumed the women were victims of a sexual marketplace. The archaeology reveals they were fuel for a bureaucratic engine that dominated the economy of Babylon. The price of their power was their humanity, traded away 1 year of silence at a time. Power is not given to the beautiful. It is seized by the patient. The Etemenanki Ziggurat is no longer a tower reaching for heaven. It is a stump of eroded mud brick, eaten by the salt of the earth. The grand gates of the precinct, once barred from the outside, have rotted off their hinges. The wind blows through the courts where the women sat, carrying the same gray dust, but now there is no one left to catch it in the folds of a skirt. The erasure is total. The clay tablets that recorded the debts and the intake dates were smashed or repurposed as fill for new foundations. The names of the women who refused the coin were never chiseled into stone monuments. In the official chronicles of Babylon, only the kings and the wars remain. The sacred marriage is reduced to a scandalous footnote in the histories of Herodotus, who heard only the rumors of the rite but never understood its machinery. He wrote of strange customs. He missed the prison, disguised as a temple. Change beat. The silence of the ruins contradicts the noise of the legend. Excavators find the silver coins scattered in the dirt, uncollected. The metal that was supposed to buy freedom is now worthless debris. The knotted rope, the symbol of their debt introduced in Act 1, has dissolved. It no longer binds a waist. It binds the narrative. The women did not disappear because they were forgotten. They disappeared because the institution consumed them so completely that no trace of the individual remained. The woman from the opening scene, waiting in the shadow for a stranger, is gone. But the shadow remains. The system of debt and bodily control did not die with Babylon. It simply changed its name and moved to new cities. The ledger is closed, but the calculation continues. Subscribe, hit the bell, and like. The loudest part of history is the page they left blank.